to you all. They are Mayor Benny Masella, Councillor Colleen Feeney, and Councillor Maria Torres. On behalf of all of us here, I'd like to thank you three for your commitment to Montréal-Ouest and for sticking with our council for another term. Bienvenue à tous les résidents de Montréal-Ouest présents ce soir. Avant de déclencher notre rencontre des candidats, The Informer a invité nos trois conseillers réélus par acclamation pour vous adresser la parole ce soir. Ils sont le maire Benny Masella, conseillère Colleen Feeney et conseillère Maria Torres. Donc, de la part de nous tous, je me permets de vous remercier, vous trois, d'avoir consacré autant d'années au développement de notre ville et d'accepter de relever le défi pour un autre 4 ans. Mayor Masella, I invite you to turn on your mic and address the attendees of tonight's event. Mayor Masella, à vous la parole.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Bonsoir, mes concitoyens. Merci d'être ici ce soir. My name is Benny Masella, and I'm the mayor of our town. I want to thank the Informer for organizing this event and Julie Ducharme for acting as our moderator. Et surtout, mes remerciements à vous tous. Il s'agira de mon 4e mandat à titre de maire de notre ville et je suis très reconnaissant de la confiance que vous m'avez témoignée. Most importantly, thank you, my fellow Mo-Westers. This will mark my 4th term as mayor of our town, and I'm so appreciative of the confidence you have demonstrated towards me. I look back at the personal goals I set out during the 2017 election. Continue rebuilding our infrastructure, secure the grants to build our recreation center, bring development to the library lot, move on to the next phases of the Davies Park rejuvenation, and use our strategic financial plan to keep tax increases at or below cost of living. I'm so proud that as a team, our outgoing council achieved them all. After the elections, and after the council has met and discussed, we will set forth our goals for the new mandate. J'ai revu les objectifs personnels que je me suis fixés lors des élections en 2017. Continuer nos travaux de renouvellement des infrastructures, travailler pour sécuriser les aides financières permettant la construction de le centre récréatif, travailler pour attirer des développements du lot de la bibliothèque, réaliser les prochaines phases de rajeunissement de Parc Davies et utiliser notre plan stratégique financier à titre de ligne directrice pour maintenir les augmentations des taxes foncières inférieures ou égales à l'index de le prix de consommation. Je suis tellement fier qu'en tant qu'équipe, ce conseil sortant les a toutes atteints. Après les élections et après que le conseil sera réuni et on aura discuté, nous définirons nos objectifs pour le nouveau mandat. Alors, le 7 novembre, veuillez exercer votre droit et voter pour les 2 personnes qui formeront le reste du conseil. On November 7th, please do exercise your vote and cast your ballot for the 2 people that will form the balance of council. Thank you and have a good evening. Merci à vous tous et bonne soirée.
Thank you, Mayor Masella. Colleen Feeney, the floor is yours. À vous la parole.
Merci, Madame Ducharme, and good evening to all. First and foremost, thank you to the residents of Montreal-Ouest for giving me your trust for the next 4 years. I assure you I will continue to work as hard in this next mandate as I have in the past to serve our community. Je suis fière du bilan du Conseil et de ce que nous avons accompli comme équipe pendant les 4 dernières années. We have, as Mayor Masella said, kept property taxes below the consumer price index every year. We've also invested $9.5 million into infrastructure and capital projects, and yet we have decreased our net debt. Nous avons obtenu une aide financière de 12,5 millions de dollars pour un nouveau centre sportif et récréatif. We created an age-friendly policy to make our community a better one for all age groups. Et nous avons mis en œuvre notre plan d'embellissement de l'avenue Westminster. And on a day-to-day basis, we've continued to give you the services and facilities that make this town a great place to call home. But there is more to be done on these issues. And in the next 4 years, my priorities will be, first, to ensure our new recreation center was built on budget and on time and with vital input from residents. Second, to continue with the implementation of the strategic financial plan and update it for the next 5 years. Third, to work with our senior advisory group and stakeholders to implement our age-friendly policy, holding annual meetings with residents. Fourth, to continue our work on the revitalization of Westminster Avenue, including supports for local businesses. And fifth, to promote measures to increase resident safety. I'd like to see a forum where we can all come together to discuss traffic and safety issues on a town-wide basis. J'ai hâte à ces défis et de continuer à travailler avec et pour vous tous. I am honored to serve you again. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Councillor Feeney. Councillor Torres, the floor is yours.
Good evening. Bonsoir à tous. Thank you, Madame Bouchard, and many thanks to Heather Baylis of the Informer for organizing tonight's Meet the Candidates night. I would like to start by thanking the residents of our wonderful community for your encouragement, support, and trust. I would also like to thank my family, my husband Bob and my sons Edward and Bernard, for their unwavering support. Ce fut un honneur et un privilège de vous servir en tant que conseillère aux travaux publics, édifices publics et à l'environnement. Au cours des quatre dernières années, je tiens à vous assurer que ce n'est pas parce que j'ai été acclamée que je prendrai mes responsabilités pour acquises. As my fellow councillor Colleen Feeney and Mayor Masala pointed out, we're proud of what we have accomplished as a team in the past 4 years. Some of the accomplishments include major infrastructure work on 5 streets across town, the adoption of the Residual Management Strategic Plan, a plan which will help us, the residents and the town, drastically reduce waste being sent to landfills. Over 300 new trees were planted in the last 4 years under the Tree Accelerated program. The Environment Department joined the Public Works Department, and as a wonderful young coordinator specializing in the environment was hired. This combined department will be in better position to address the various environmental issues we face as a town. The Environment Action Committee was established as a permanent committee. This will guarantee that an environmentally friendly group of residents will always have a voice in future councils. I'm excited about the work that lies ahead. 8 years ago, when I first ran for a council seat, my biggest concern was the state of our arena. I joined town council to help replace the existing outdated structure. Well, in the next 4 years, I will have the opportunity to work towards realizing this great project at last. I will also continue to support road infrastructure projects, as well as different environmental initiatives, such as fostering biodiversity, encouraging pollinator gardens across town, and finalizing both the streetlight study and the residual management strategic plan. It is also my belief that we need to continue addressing traffic safety issues, and we must continue following the town's strategic financial plan. Mais surtout, je m'engage à servir notre ville et ses résidents au mieux de mes capacités pour l'amélioration de notre communauté. Bonne chance à tous les candidats. To you all, I wish you a good evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the three of you. There's a virtual applause going out to you all. At this point, I bid you farewell, and hopefully you'll remain with us on the Connected YouTube channel. But we will bid you farewell, and I invite all my fellow candidates to join the screen again. Wonderful. We have everybody back here. Hopefully you can see everyone in full plan. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Informer, I'd like to welcome you to this evening's opportunity to meet the candidates for upcoming municipal elections on November 7th. My name is Julie Ducharme. I'm a resident here of Montréal-Ouest. I'll be your moderator this evening. Mesdames et messieurs, de la part du Informer, bienvenue à notre soirée pour rencontrer les candidats de notre prochaine élection qui aura lieu le 7 novembre ici à Montréal-Ouest. Je me présente, Julie Ducharme, résidente ici à Montréal-Ouest, et je serai votre modératrice ce soir. J'aimerais commencer avec quelques mots de remerciement, de remercier en premier temps nos candidats qui sont ici avec nous ce soir, premièrement de se présenter pour cette élection, de vouloir être impliqués dans l'évolution de notre ville et de vouloir s'investir sur un plan personnel à son développement futur. Donc, je crois que tout le monde autour de la table virtuelle se joint à moi pour vous remercier pour votre implication et votre volonté de vous y commettre. So I'd like to first take a moment to thank all our candidates for presenting themselves for this election, for wanting to be involved in the evolution of our town, and for personally investing in our town's future. So I think everybody around the virtual room joins me in thanking you for your commitment and putting yourselves forward for town council. Hopefully there'd be normally a resounding applause going on from the room, but we'll save that for the next time we get to meet in person. Until then, I will also take a moment to thank you, the residents of Montreal-Ouest, who are taking the time to inform yourselves on our candidates, asking the tough questions, and caring about our town's future, and especially for coming out to vote on November 7th. We encourage you all to spread the word to your neighbors and friends to make sure we have a great voter turnout. Merci à vous, les résidents qui sont présents ce soir, de vouloir vous impliquer, la curiosité pour connaître nos candidats, de poser les questions qui ont besoin d'être posées et surtout pour vous pointer au moment de l'élection le 7 novembre. Parlez-en avec vos voisins, on veut être nombreux au moment du vote. Donc, passons à la soirée. Comme on l'a fait dans des années précédentes, la soirée Meet the Candidates commence avec les présentations formelles par chaque candidat. Ça va nous prendre environ une demi-heure, passer à travers tout le monde. Ensuite, on va passer à la période des questions. Les 3 dernières questions seront annoncées à 9h30 ce soir et on va terminer la soirée, la clore, avec les présentations de clôture de chaque candidat dans l'ordre inverse dans lequel ils ont fait leur présentation d'ouverture. Notre intention, c'est de terminer la soirée à 10h ce soir. So as we've done in previous Meet the Candidate evenings, we're going to start the evening with the formal presentations by each candidate. This will take us about a half an hour, and we will then move on to the question period. The last 3 questions will be announced at 9:30 at the latest, and then we'll close out the evening by giving each candidate 1 minute for their concluding remarks in reverse order from the opening presentation. What's going to be different this year, of course, is the format of the questions because we can't line up in the town hall like we did in years past. So residents were invited to share questions in advance to the informer, and we will start with these. But throughout the duration of the event, questions can be submitted online by going to slido.com. If you bear with me here, I'm just going to share my screen, and I will share the information for you all. Hopefully we can all see that. I'll leave this up for a minute. Essentially, go to this website, enter the passcode, and the event code is MW Candidates, and you'll be able to submit your questions. We just ask that you add the name of your street to the question. And for those of you who might have it, all the information is on the back page of the Informer. Cette année, pour les questions, on a reçu des questions à l'avance qui ont été soumises au Informer. Et pour ceux qui ne l'ont pas encore posé, vous pouvez les poser sur le site slido.com à l'information que vous voyez à l'écran. Une fois qu'on a reçu votre question, c'est moi qui vais les lire et je vais les adresser aux candidats. Les questions sont la bienvenue en français et en anglais, bien sûr, et on vous suggère d'inscrire la rue sur laquelle vous habitez au sein de votre question. So once we've received your questions, I will read them out and address them to the relevant candidates. And questions are allowed, of course, in both French and English. Now, remember, this is an opportunity to learn from each other in a form of mutual respect. We've asked our candidates to be prepared to inform you of their platform, to answer your questions in the language of your choice. But any rude or inappropriate questions will not be addressed in the public forum. Donc, c'est une opportunité d'en apprendre davantage sur nos candidats dans un environnement de respect mutuel. Nous avons demandé aux candidats de vous informer sur leur plan et de répondre à vos questions dans la langue de votre choix. Notez qu'aucune question impolie sera posée sur cette scène publique. Please note, these are positions for our town council. They're not yet assigned a specific responsibility or file. So on November 7th, you're going to be electing the person you feel is best capable of representing you, regardless of the file they will be assigned, because the file will be assigned after the election by the mayor. Donc, c'est important de noter qu'il y a 2 sièges à pourvoir à l'élection Il s'agit d'un poste au sein de notre conseil municipal et aucune responsabilité ou dossier spécifique ne leur est encore attribué. Donc, vous élisez donc les personnes qui vont être à la table et le dossier leur sera attribué par la suite de l'élection par le maire. Now, let's get to our candidates. Enough from me. The order of the presentations tonight has already been determined by a draw done by the informer. The councillor candidates have 3 minutes to share their platform. We're going to begin with seat 1, and the first presentation will be by Lauren Small-Pennefather, followed by Eric Aberman. Unfortunately, Mr. Ward is not able to attend the event tonight, but I do have a few words to share on his behalf. We will then move on to seat 2. I'll do the biographies, or introduce the biographies, and then the presentations will be from Elizabeth Yulin, followed by Julian Feldman. L'ordre des présentations a déjà été déterminé au sort par les informers. Chaque candidat a 3 minutes pour livrer leur plateforme. On commence avec le siège numéro 1. Je vais lire la biographie. Ensuite, on passe aux présentations formelles. Ensuite, je vais lire les biographies pour le siège numéro 2 et on va passer à leur présentation formelle. Donc, pour la première biographie ce soir, Lauren Small-Pennefather is a proud Mo-Wester for the last 13 years. With 25 years of federal public service, actuellement directrice des célébrations et commémorations nationales à Parc Canada et auparavant directrice des voies navigables au Québec, responsable de 5 canaux historiques incluant la Chine. The majority of Lauren's career has been devoted to legislation, diplomatic relations, policy, and negotiations. Lauren holds a bachelor's degree in science and human affairs and the School of Community and Public Affairs and a master's degree in public policy and public administration from Concordia. Elle a complété un certificat d'études supérieures en droit aérien et spatial de la faculté de droit de McGill et un certificat en diversité and inclusion de Cornell. Never missing a run in 22 years in support of Terry Fox, a board member for Concordia School of Community and Public Affairs and the Montréal-Ouest Community Services Council. En 2017, Lauren a fait partie de l'équipe Canada au demi-marathon des 20e Jeux Maccabia. Lauren Small-Pennefather, welcome. Now, for Mr. Ward, he is not available to attend tonight, but he did share the following message. On behalf of Mr. Ward, good evening, fellow Montreal-West residents, candidates, and council. First and foremost, I would like to apologize for my absence this evening. Unfortunately, I've had some recent health issues that I have been taking care of. However, I expect to be back on the campaign trail within the next few days. I moved to Montreal-West 10 years ago with my 2 beautiful children, Noah and Emily. Like many residents of our town, I'm extremely proud to be living and raising my family here. I've had the opportunity over the past couple of years to hear many of the concerns from our residents regarding several issues in our town, from the proposed development projects such as our new recreation center and the Strathern Park lot rezoning, to traffic complaints due to the Westminster train crossing, and not to mention speeding and safety issues. I too share many of these same concerns and think that some much needed change is long overdue. As we look forward towards the future of our town and our community, I see many exciting opportunities for change, improvements, and revitalization that will continue to benefit current residents as well as attract new residents and families to Montreal-West for many years to come. I would like to personally thank those of you who have reached out to me directly with your questions and to provide your support. I promise you that your voices have been heard, and I appreciate your many thoughts, opinions, and suggestions brought forward. Having an open dialogue, being transparent, and seeking input and feedback from our residents will be crucial to our long-term success. If elected, I will always keep this in mind when deciding how best to resolve or vote on a particular matter. I am happy to hear from you and answer questions that you may have regarding any particular subject or interest. Can always be reached via email at nathaniel.ward@live.ca. Thank you once again, and I'd like to wish the best of luck to all the candidates on November 7th. You might be tired of hearing from me, but I am almost done. And the last biography I'm pleased to present is that of Mr. Eric Aberman. Son épouse Dania et leur fils Shay et leur chien Bruce sont emménagés l'an dernier à Montréal-Ouest et en sont immédiatement tombés amoureux. Leur expérience de la communauté, des installations récréatives et des parcs leur confirme chaque jour que Montréal-Ouest est le meilleur endroit sur l'île de Montréal pour élever une famille. Eric has a Bachelor of Commerce from the John Molson School of Business, a Master's of Science in Real Estate from NYU, and is a certified building contractor in the state of Florida. He spent the past decade managing a portfolio of 500 rental units in Montreal and working with multiple municipalities in the United States, building communities from the ground up. Having completed his final project in Florida during the COVID pandemic, Eric wants to focus his efforts on helping our community. That concludes the biographies for seat number 1. I will now ask all candidates other than Ms. Small-Pennefather to turn off their cameras. Ms. Small-Pennefather, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself for your presentation. You have 3 minutes.
Parfait. Merci beaucoup, Madame Ducharme. I apologize, I'm just getting over a cold. Like probably many of you right now is the flu and cold season, so I apologize if I have to stop a few times to grab a glass of water. Donc, je suis ravie de me présenter comme candidate pour conseiller pour la siège numéro 1 pour la ville de Montréal-Ouest. I am very pleased to present my candidacy as a councillor for Montreal-West. As Julie had said, I've lived here with my family for 13 years, and like many of you, I discovered this amazing jewel on the island of Montreal. Going to Concordia University, it's amazing that I never knew that this beautiful enclave existed. And my husband, when I was pregnant with our daughter, said, Lauren, we have to go look at this amazing town called Montreal-West, and deeply fell in love with this community because it's a wonderful community right in the heart of almost downtown, with so many wonderful amenities for its residents. I have as Julie had indicated, I have 25 years of public service. I'm very involved in this community. I have a proven track record for the last 13 years being part of the Community Services Council, being chair of governing board for 3 years for Edinburgh Elementary School, also being the coordinator for the Terry Fox Run for Montreal-West, and part of the Young Families Roundtable. We've really enjoyed living here, and I felt like many of you, pendant la pandémie, j'ai pris le temps d'avoir une introspection. Comment est-ce que je pourrais aider plus la communauté de Montréal-Ouest, parce que c'est très important. Et j'ai regardé autour de moi, j'ai dit qu'il y avait des places pour avoir des améliorations dans notre communauté qui est très important. Donc, ma position de valeur, c'est en tant que membre de conseil, vous avez mon engagement ferme et m'engager à représenter tous les résidents de Montréal-Ouest de manière juste et transparente. So for me, really, it's really important to be at the table and to be able to represent all the residents of Montreal-West in a fair and transparent manner. I think that I have an influence at the table, being well known in the community for 13 years is where I want to lend my voice. And I have a strong background in policy and communications and collaboration. Being a federal public servant, I have a lot of experience working with community partners at the municipal, provincial, and federal levels. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and do whatever it takes to really bring this community forward. In planning for the future is super important with regards to succession, and how we're going to move the agenda for Montreal-West forward is very important. Safety and security, of course, are paramount. Donc, la sécurité et sûreté de nos résidents pour les enfants et nos aînés aussi. So, of course, we have multi-generational families here, and I think it's really important that we respect that as well. And environment, I just want to mention that the COP is coming up, COP26 in Glasgow, and the environment is really important in terms of what we can do as a small city in raising awareness for environment. And with that, thank you so much, and I look forward to serving you in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Small-Pennefather. And now I'd like to turn the camera and mic over to Mr. Aberman. Ms. Pennefather, if you could turn your camera off, and we will now have the formal presentation from Eric Aberman. The floor is yours.
Merci Julie pour les introductions, et merci à vous tous d'être avec nous ce soir. Montreal-Ouest is heading towards a time of change, and because I can and want to help our town navigate through these times, I decided to run for town council. The upcoming redevelopment of the recreational center and the need to increase our tax revenue by attracting more development to our town will require decisions that will shape our community for years to come. My professional and educational experience will help the council to face these decisions. My education provided me with an extensive training in the practice of private-public partnerships. They require that private developers work with municipalities so that all new developments proceed with the municipalities and their residents' best interests in mind. This includes such issues as sustainable development, changes in traffic pattern, and increased enrollment in local schools. Professionally, I've been directly responsible for ground-up developments. This means the entire development process from the rezoning to the installation of infrastructure, from civil works such as pipes, sewers, and utilities, to the ultimate construction of homes. In my work with communities, I have always considered their history and their unique characteristics. I never try to fit round pegs into square holes. My past projects have included the redevelopment of the country club and its facilities, the community center, swimming pools, and tennis courts in Florida, and the constructions of, again, many homes. De plus, j'étais responsable de la gestion d'un portefeuille de 500 appartements sur l'île de Montréal. Comme de nombreux immeubles locatifs à Montréal, ceux dont j'avais le garde étaient des immeubles anciens, semblables à ceux que nous voyons dans notre ville. J'ai les connaissances techniques et l'expérience nécessaires à l'entretien de ces propriétés vieillissantes et je suis familier avec les défis que cela présente. Mes projets m'ont permis de travailler avec les diverses municipalités, tant ici qu'aux États-Unis, et j'ai été témoin aussi bien de succès que d'échecs des gouvernements municipaux. J'ai l'intention d'apporter à notre ville des bénéfices des meilleures pratiques que m'ont enseigné les projets de ces municipalités. La sûreté et la sécurité sont parmi les nombreuses raisons pour lesquelles ma famille a décidé de s'établir à Montréal-Ouest. Elles sont parmi mes principales priorités. J'ai vécu dans plusieurs villes et je n'ai pas rencontré d'équipe de la sécurité publique aussi amicable et serviable que la nôtre. J'attends avec impatience l'occasion de travailler avec eux. I bring a fresh set of eyes and perspective to some of our town's long-lasting issues, such as traffic. I have been involved in the study and implementation of traffic calming devices and can contribute with creative solutions to our problems, especially along Westminster and the overflow it causes on adjacent streets. I am fiscally responsible. I do not like to spend money unnecessarily, but I do understand that sometimes we need to invest in order to maintain and improve our town for the long term. Change can be frightening and is often met with resistance, but without change, there is no progress. My real-world experience in development, construction, and property management is something our council needs as we enter this period of change. Je voudrais encore une fois remercier l'Informer d'avoir organisé l'événement ce soir. J'ai hâte de vous écouter et de faire mon mieux pour répondre à toutes vos questions et inquiétudes. Merci.
Thank you, Mr. Aberman. I'd ask you now to turn off your camera, and I invite Elizabeth Yulin and Julian Feldman to turn on your cameras while I read your biographies. So for the seat 2, we have 2 candidates running for the seat. I'll start with the biography for Elizabeth Yulin. Elizabeth has held the Recreation and Cultural Services portfolio on council since 2006, adding the communication portfolio in 2017. She also founded and chaired the Environmental Action Committee, chaired the Traffic and Safety Committee, has been a member of the Planning Advisory Committee, or the PAC, sat on the Informer Board, the Young Families Roundtable, and the Community Services Council. She holds a BA from McGill and MBA from Concordia. Madame Yulin a été bénévole auprès de plusieurs organisations locales, dont la Popote Roulante, l'Académie Ouest, École Edinburgh, la Bibliothèque publique et les Amis de Meadowbrook. Welcome, Ms. Yulin. And now I'll read Julian Feldman's biography. Julian moved to Montreal-Ouest in 2008, bringing his family from the Plateau. Both Julian and Joanne are career journalists, and their daughter attended Edinburgh and Royal-West. Au cours de sa carrière, Julian a travaillé dans de nombreuses organisations journalistiques, dans les journaux, la radio et la télévision, avant de travailler pendant une décennie dans l'industrie .com à Montréal. Au cours de la décennie suivante, il a poursuivi des opportunités dans les énergies renouvelables et a travaillé dans le domaine de l'efficacité énergétique en tant que consultant auprès d'architectes et d'organisations industrielles. Now, for more than a decade as an elected public school commissioner, Julian has organized young families and advocated for their children defending public education against against provincial government interference. In addition to previous leadership positions overseeing finance and audit as chairman of the Human Resources Committee, he led the school board's constitutional challenge against Bill 21. Julian is currently chairman of English Montreal's Governance Committee. Ms. Yulin, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself, and I'd ask Mr. Feldman to turn off his camera. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julie. I'm going to apologize in advance for the noise in the background if you hear it. They're repaving my street at 7:30 p.m., so it may be, I'm going to try to speak out. So good evening, bonsoir. Let me start by asking, when you conjure up your fondest memories of Montreal-Ouest, when you're telling your friends about the town, what do you say? I expected something about the ambiance and the people, especially the events and organizations that connect those people. It's Canada Day, it's Old Timers Hockey, maybe it's day camp or swim meets or the 50+ club, or maybe it's hanging out at the library or at your annual block party. Or maybe trick-or-treating among the households of witches and carved pumpkins. I bet that's what you'll tell them about. I bet that's what you'll remember about this place. Well, over the last 16 years, I've dedicated myself to this place, nurturing this place, refurbishing nearly all of our parks and playgrounds, pushing many environmental initiatives so we can pass on a truly green community to the next generation. Advocating for increased road safety so that your kids can walk to school or a friend's house alone, just like my kids once did, without worry. And I'm always striving for better communication between the town and its citizens. Certains disent qu'il est temps de changer, qu'il faut de nouveaux visages, des nouvelles idées. Mais moi, je dis qu'on n'arrête pas d'avoir de nouvelles idées juste parce qu'on est là depuis un certain temps et qu'on a quelques nouveaux cheveux gris. So let's be clear. Voting for an incumbent is not the same as voting for the status quo. No one who runs for elected office is satisfied with the status quo. We do so because we want to make change, and I'm no exception. So what kind of change? Well, let's take the new rec center for one. That's about as far from the status quo as you can get. It will be the biggest project we've tackled in the last 50 to 60 years and will form another important part of this place. For young families and empty nesters, for seniors who desperately need accessible facilities. We finally got that $12.5 million grant, and now another big challenge begins, making sure it comes in on time, on budget, and properly reflects what the community wants. Je sais que certains résidents sont préoccupés par les coûts du centre. Je sais bien. Mais depuis 2009, on a investi 28 millions de dollars dans nos infrastructures vieillissantes et on a réussi à conserver un budget et un surplus très sain. Je sais qu'on va gérer l'investissement dans le centre récréatif de la même façon responsable. I also know you can count on me to tirelessly advocate for this place, to listen, to understand, and to act on your behalf. That is, if you choose to re-elect me on November 7th. Thank you. Merci.
Merci, Madame Yulin. Thank you, Elizabeth. I will now like to hand the camera and the floor, the mic over to Mr. Feldman. Ms. Yulin, if you could turn your camera off. Thank you very much. Mr. Feldman, my apologies, but you are on mute. How about we try that again?
I just noticed that. Good evening, everyone. Again, bonsoir à tous. I'd like to cover some of the issues I've been discussing with you door to door. I'm running to bring a fresh perspective to council. It's time, I think, for council to embrace the changes that everyone now takes for granted. More openness, more transparency, more consultation, more dialogue with Mo-Westers. Je me présente pour apporter une nouvelle perspective au Conseil. Il est temps que le Conseil adopte les changements que tout le monde considère maintenant comme acquis plus d'ouverture, plus de transparence, plus de consultation, et plus de dialogue avec les Montwesters. The world has changed in the 15 years since our town urban plan was last conceived. The way we live in Montreal-West has changed. Many of us are working at home. We're using the town center more than ever. We welcome many young families with dozens of new COVID puppies. Our rec center remains a dream, but taxes are real. Also, rising volumes of through traffic are spilling onto residential streets. We do need to have a conversation on whether our plan is aging well or not, and how we can change our council's culture in the process. To young families with children, I want to talk to you directly about a growing movement called the Child-Friendly Town, sponsored by UNICEF, La Ville Amie des Enfants. It's about formally recognizing the role of young families in Montreal-West for the first time and adopting the principles and framework of the Child-Friendly Town Initiative. They're simple and useful. Any town policy that's adopted should first consider the impact of children. It should be in writing. Take traffic through town. We grew accustomed to traffic during the Turcotte construction. Rush hour on Westminster then improved during the pandemic when we were all in lockdown. When Turcotte construction ended and pandemic lockdowns began lifting, many of us recognized that something fundamental had changed. Redevelopment in Côte Saint-Luc has boosted shortcut traffic volume to Highway 20, and that's now spilling over into streets like Strathern and Ballantyne like never before. From the perspective of a child-friendly town, diverting traffic from residential streets becomes our top priority. The town has the power to act already. That's what's so important. When Devil's Hill was closed at Broughton, right where I live, also to restrain Highway 20 through traffic, Montreal-West preserved the quality of life by diverting rush hour traffic from residential streets and won a lawsuit giving a carte blanche to act on safety. I mentioned the intensive redevelopment in Côte Saint-Luc, but that's also our hope in Montreal-West as well. Recently proposed zoning changes will increase the density of Montreal-West a lot, boosting our traffic on residential streets. Higher density might be inevitable if we want to hold the line on taxes, but everyone wants to understand its impact on our aging infrastructure. What's important is that we make a commitment today to transparency and consultation and to involve the entire town. Take the proposed rezoning of the public parking lot on Strathern. In my opinion, it was the council's duty to consult local residents prior to making them part of its new densification program. Densification itself must become a major topic of discussion around Montreal-West, just like the rec center.
Mr. Feldman, I'd ask that you conclude your opening remarks.
I'm concluding. Rezoning Strathern, council raised the question of its future plans for town center revitalization. 15 years after it was first discussed, very little has been accomplished. In the 2009 plan adopted as a bylaw, the town vision was described as fostering a more vibrant, viable, and diversified town center as the focal point for the town's civic, commercial, and cultural affairs. However, merchants say the parking lot is essential to the town center plan. Ultimately, revitalization, town redevelopment, and the rec center project must coexist. Our one project shouldn't be allowed to cannibalize the other. The recreation center itself remains a big challenge financially. It could mean higher taxes for every resident. Other projects like the town center
Mr. Feldman,
revitalization.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off because
I look forward to talking to everyone at the door, and I'm ready for your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We're now going to pass on to the question and answer period. So I'd ask all the candidates to turn your cameras back on. Keep yourselves on mute. But those in seat one can unmute yourselves because the first question is directed to you. As a reminder, for those of you who'd like to ask questions tonight, you can go to the slido.com website and you can see the information on the e-bulletin that was shared today with the password event code, and the event code and the password code are MW candidates. The first question is directed to seat number one, is from Kevin Brothaler from Ballantyne North. Thank you for running. We have a petition with support of over half the residents on Ballantyne North between Sherbrooke and Curzon. We are dissatisfied with the town's current approach to traffic, and we want to see change. It is not only the speed and volume of cars, but also the heavy trucks, empty city buses, and school buses. This is harming our safety and quality of life. Do you agree that the town has not done enough to address the situation on Ballantyne North, Brock North, and Strathern North? And if you do, what steps will you be taking to address the problem? We respectfully do not want 4 more years of empty words and no change. Thank you very much. Mr. Aberman, you will be the first to answer this question. You have 1 minute. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you for that question, and it is a very important question. The traffic going onto these streets, as you said, the commercial vehicles and the empty school and city buses are a problem. First of all, what I would like to do moving into town, if I were elected to town council, would be to forbid commercial vehicles to be using those streets unless it's for local deliveries. This is done in many places, and it does take away this. I don't understand either why the city buses are using our residential streets as through streets to get around traffic when they're in transit. It would be something that I would reach out to the STM to see if we could stop that as well. I only have 20 more seconds here to my answer, but I do have a lot of ideas as to how we could calm the traffic on Strathern, Brock, and Ballantyne. They revolve around limiting left turns off of Westminster during peak times. I've lived in areas before where we've had the same issues of people cutting through residential neighborhoods for their convenience, and really the only way to stop them is to make it less convenient. So I think that putting no left turn signs going to Ballantyne and Brock could help. To Strathern, it's a little bit more complicated because there are city services there. There's a rec center, there's schools that people have to get to, and I would love to speak to you more in person to give my ideas because I am out of time. Thank you.
Thank you for respecting that. Ms. Bald-Pettifather, you have a minute to address the same question.
Thank you so much for that question, Mr. Botelier. I apologize for not pronouncing your name properly. So I think we really need to look at this traffic issue writ large. It's not specific to 3 streets in Montreal-West. We're such a small town that has very little access to Sherbrooke, as you know. The city wasn't constructed for through traffic the way it is, with the urban sprawl, with the developments in neighboring communities such as Hampstead, Côte St. Luc, LaSalle, Lachine, who use a lot of our infrastructure to get access to Sherbrooke. So for me, when I was director of Quebec Waterways on Lachine Canal, we would often consult with neighboring communities to come up with solutions and engage traffic engineers. And I think at this time, because so much development has gone on, so much, there's increased traffic, we really need experts to come to the table. And I would definitely commission a study to look at the whole urban plan for Montreal-West. So that is how I would look at that issue. And I would be very pleased to represent that at the table when elected as a councillor for seat 1. Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll now move on to the second question of the evening, which is also directed to seat 1, but we will change the order on which you will answer. So, Ms. Bald-Pettifather, you get the mic first for the first minute. La question provient de Derek Elliott sur la rue Percival. Ma question touche les candidats du siège numéro 1 et la relève future de notre mairie. Dans une élection future, par exemple dans 4 ans, envisagez-vous vous présenter pour le poste du maire?
Très bonne question, Monsieur Elliott. Donc, je pense que pour planification, pour la succession de notre ville, c'est très, très important. C'est pour ça que j'ai présenté ma candidature, parce que j'essaie de me préparer dans le futur si jamais il y a des conseillers ou la maire qui ne veut pas retourner dans leur poste dans les prochaines élections en 4 ans. C'est pour avoir la chance d'une transition entre le conseil qui existe présentement et maintenant que j'aimerais m'assister pour avoir des décisions à la table, je serai prête pour ce défi en 4 ans, c'est sûr et certain. Donc, merci beaucoup pour la question.
Je vous remercie beaucoup. Monsieur Aberman?
Merci pour la question. C'est vraiment quelque chose d'important, la succession du maire puis du conseil de notre ville. À ce moment, je prends toute ma concentration vraiment cette élection pour conseiller de ville. j'ai pas vraiment pensé de si je voulais faire mon candidat pour le maire dans 4 ans, si Maire Messala décide de ne faire pas encore ou si je pense que je peux faire un meilleur job. Mais c'est quelque chose que, comme Lauren a dit, avec l'expérience de si je suis élu, avec l'expérience dans ces premières 4 ans, je pense si c'est le bon temps pour me faire un candidat pour maire, j'aurai le temps d'apprendre un peu de comment notre ville fonctionne. Puis c'est quelque chose qui pourrait être. Merci.
Merci beaucoup à vous deux. Je vous demanderai de vous mettre sur sourdine et on va passer la parole au candidat du siège numéro 2. We'll now move to a question directed to the candidates of seat number 2. And the first answer will be provided by Mr. Feldman, followed by Ms. Yulin. The question is from Mark Layberg on Nelson, asking about dog runs near Hodgson. As I'm sure you are aware, there has been a huge increase in the number of dogs in the town during COVID. All you have to do is stand on any corner and see the proliferation of dogs walking by. We have a great dog park near the town hall, but dog owners are asking for more services. The temporary dog park at Hodgson for the winter months is a great relief, but it is only temporary. Do you support the inclusion of a dog park, nothing fancy, just a fenced area, in the reconfiguration of the Hodgson field as part of the new arena complex? Mr. Feldman, you have the next minute to answer.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, going door to door, I've literally met dozens and dozens of new dogs. I wasn't aware there were so many new COVID puppies in the town, but they're there. I live near the town hall next to the high school. And I have to say that when we moved into the town, it took the council about the first dog park. Now, the first dog park, I drive by it every day. It's a beautiful dog park. I think that it was cleverly constructed because they swapped a little children's park with and created a space for the dog park. But the problem is, and it was a nice place to put it because it's not too close to where people live, frankly. But the problem is, and going up and down Percival last night and Bedbrook, everyone says that the problem with the dog park is that it's just not where the dogs are. And you have to put a dog park where the dogs are. And that's one reason why a lot of people don't use the current dog park, which, cost over $500,000. So yeah, there has to be a solution. But, as I said before, we have to have a real dialogue. It can't be the council sort of meeting in a closed session to have long discussions that last many, many years. There has to be a solution. There's no reason it can't be achieved within the next year.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Sorry to cut you off there. Just to be fair, I have to play the police this evening, so please bear with me. Ms. Yulin, would you like to chime in on the same question?
I sure would. Thank you. So I'm going to say something first to respond to what Julian just mentioned. Just to clarify that the dog park we have in the southern end of town by the town hall did not cost $500,000. That was for the entire revitalization of Davies Park in addition to the dog park. So that's check number one.
Yeah, I understand.
Number two, I am also the owner of a new COVID puppy, and I think Mark's question is great. And I would very much advocate for another dog park somewhere in the center of town. I don't know that our first dog park was any sort of mistake. It's very often used by lots of people, but there are lots more dogs now. So I would agree that it's something we should look at, particularly when we're getting the new rec center off the ground, because there may be space in that configuration to have a new dog park. So I join other dog owners in that request, and I would think that would be wonderful for the town. So thank you very much, Mark, for that question.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin. I'd ask you to mute yourself now, and I'll direct the next question to the candidates of seat number 1. We're staying in a similar theme. And Mr. Aberman, you will have the first opportunity to provide an answer to Linda Hammerschmidt's question from Valentine North. Linda asks, what is your position on a permanent dog run by or near the new recreation center? As there are over 300 dogs in Montreal-Ouest whose owners all pay taxes, we should be able to exercise our dogs off leash all year round without having to brave the train tracks. Therefore, I'm asking for a categoric promise from each of you that the dog run on Hodgson from October 15th to April 15th will be made permanent. And when will it be done? Mr. Aberman?
Thank you for your question, Linda. Like Elizabeth, I also have a dog, and the dog runs are an important subject. I think that with public consultation, just to make sure that it's not just the vocal dog owners that want it, that absolutely Hodgson Park with the new rec center is a great place to fit in a dog park. Part of the reason why I think that is because with the work that is going to be done on the rec center moving forward, a dog park could be installed at a very significant low cost. Most of the earth will be moved already. They will already have the machines in there, the heavy machinery in there to do most of the work. And really the extra cost to it will be the fencing and the electronic gates like we have in the other dog park, which is a wonderful dog park. I bring my dog there quite often. But yes, with the number of dogs we have and with the need for another dog park, I can categorically promise you that if elected, when dealing with the rec center project, that would be something that I would look to include and I would look to speak to the community about.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask everybody to unmute themselves now. We have a few questions directed directly to candidates. And so I will start with the first question directed to Ms. Small-Pennefather. It's from Sheila Kaplan on Sheridan asking, what is your motivation for running?
That's a great question, Ms. Kaplan, and I so much appreciate that question. Like I had said, I think for the, how we want to give back to community is really important to me, and how I've invested myself in this community over the last 13 years in influencing the decision-making process. Also being a federal public servant, I'm very much used to collaboration with all levels of government and with community, and it's something that's very close to my heart. And this is why I've made that decision. I have a very supportive family to enable me to do that. I, want to keep this planning for the future going, future forward, in looking at innovative ways that we can improve what we already have in our community moving forward, making sure that all voices are represented at the table, to be transparent and fair in my representation. And maybe we won't always be on the same side of every decision, but I can explain my decisions and I can stand by them, my decisions, and I am accountable for those decisions as well. And for those reasons, I presented myself as a candidate for seat 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Small-Pennefather. The following question is directed towards Mr. Aberman. It's also from Sheila Kaplan on Sheridan. Sheila asks, what innovations are you bringing to the table, Mr. Aberman? The floor is yours.
Thank you for your question. In terms of innovations, I'm not quite sure exactly what you mean, but in my professional experience in development, I've always looked for new ways to build sustainable buildings, whether that's energy, how the building produces energy, keeps its energy with the envelope, materials used. I'm always forward looking on the cutting edge. I love learning new things and implementing them. So in terms of innovation for me, it's really in terms of sustainable development. I would like to look at the possibility of adding solar panels to the new rec center to help alleviate the cost of electricity for it. I know it can't run everything, especially during the winter months, but it could absolutely help us lower costs and have an energy efficient and forward-looking building. I hope that answers your question. Again, it's to me kind of vague about innovation, but you could always reach out to me if you want more specifics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aberman. The following question is directed to Mr. Feldman, so I'd ask you to unmute yourself. The question comes from René Boucher on Westminster North, asking, Mr. Feldman, you are contesting seat 2, which has been held by Elizabeth Yulin for a good while. De toute évidence, vous croyez pouvoir faire mieux qu'elle. Your position as commissioner with the EMSB can conceivably take up a fair amount of your time in order to properly discharge your responsibilities, vous laissant peu de temps pour une autre position qui peut aussi exiger une assez grande disponibilité. What would you bring to the council that could convince me that Montréal-Ouest would be better served by you? Qu'apporteriez-vous au conseil qui pourrait me convaincre que vous pourriez mieux servir Montréal-Ouest? The floor is yours.
Merci pour la question, Monsieur Boucher. Mon expertise à ce point-ci, c'est dans la gouvernance, dans la consultation, dans le dialogue avec les constituants. So, just to recap that very quickly, my expertise as a longtime school board commissioner is in governance. There was a lot of work in past years to restore governance to the English Montreal School Board, where I have been a commissioner for many years. But it was as a parent volunteer that I started as a governing board chair, like Ms. Small Pennefather. And it went on to at the school board level. But fundamentally, governance is something that also can work well in a small town like Montreal-Ouest. We discussed the issues of transparency and governance. A lot of people just don't think there's enough. A lot of people are asking for change. I do appreciate Ms. Yulin's dedication to the town in recreation and many other things as well. But after 15 or 20 years, maybe there's time for a change. I would love to see the town plan, for example, be implemented. The revitalization plan on Westminster. I want to push for that because that's one of the reasons that my family wanted to live in this town. We believed, 10, 12 years ago that it was going to happen. It never happened. I would like to work on that plan and make it a priority again. There are big things and small things in Montreal-Ouest. Dog parks are a small thing. There's no reason we can't achieve them. There are a lot of dogs out there, a lot of families. It affects their lifestyle when they don't have a dog park. But 10 years after I moved to the town, dog parks are still a controversy. If we have some change, maybe we'll achieve some new things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feldman. The following question is from Robert King on Wolseley North and directed to Ms. Yulin. If you could unmute yourself, please. Robert's question is, what do you consider to have been your most important accomplishment in the last 4 years?
Wow, 2 minutes. Okay. Well, I feel that probably the things that I'm proudest of in Montreal-Ouest are a number of the environmental changes we've been able to make. So we've got solar panels now. I know Eric mentioned that for the rec center, but we have them now heating the pool. We have radiant heating for the public works garage. We have organic waste pickup, which I know many of you can't imagine we never had, but we didn't have that for a long time. So we have that now. We've got trees being planted at a rate that we've never had before because we've done a lot of work advocating for that. We're not at all finished with that mandate, and I want to do more. But so far, I feel very good about some of the environmental things we've done. In addition, I feel good about some of the things I brought to Montreal-Ouest with respect to communication. We didn't even have a website when I got on council, and if you can believe it, it was controversial that we have one. But of course, now we have the website, we have an e-bulletin, we have a full-time person working in communication, we have coffee with the mayor, we have council communiques in the Informer, we have an e-bulletin. None of these things existed. We're even on Facebook. So that had to be pushed for, and I pushed hard for it. And now I have the communications portfolio as part of my portfolio. So there's, again, more to do in that realm, and I intend to do it. Lastly, of course, it's recreation. And I guess it would be no surprise for anybody to hear that getting a $12.5 million grant for a new recreation center is icing on the cake of 16 years in recreation. So I'm extremely proud of that. And I can't wait to go forward to make that happen. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin. I'd take a moment to just share some information with our participants this evening. We are answering right now some questions that have been asked in advance and submitted to the Informer. However, those of you attending tonight are welcome to submit questions during the live event at the following site. The information is also on the back page of the Informer. You just need to take a note of the website and the code there because you just have to enter it twice. Thank you. Now, back to our regularly scheduled programming. The following question is directed to the to candidates of seat 2. No, I'm sorry. Wait, I have one more question. They're directed to a single candidate, to Mr. Feldman. It comes from Mr. Robert King on Wolseley North, and he asks, the campaign slogan on your posters is "Let's make a plan." That would seem to imply that you feel that the current council has not been planning ahead. Is that a correct assessment? How do you propose to change this? Mr. Feldman, the floor is yours. Please unmute yourself.
Yes, indeed. That's a great question. I read, at least once a year, I read our town urban program. And I personally, I lament that we haven't moved further on those, on some of those items. As I mentioned before, the Westminster Revitalization is a project that's been sitting there for 10 years. Very little has been done to move forward on that. A lot of the residents are very alarmed by a plan by the current council to sell the Strathern parking lot, which indicates to me, frankly, that there is a new plan afoot. And, look, after the current plan was started 15 years ago. It was adopted as a bylaw in 2009. All these years later, in 2021, we can't say that it was implemented. On the rec center, we have a grant, but we don't have full financing to proceed onto construction. So, that's a project that's 5 years away. 20 years to work on some of those items in the plan, I think is just too slow. 5 years to work on a simple dog run is too slow. The revitalization of Westminster, of the town center, is not something that is going to be very costly. We have partners. We have the merchants who we can ask to be partners on that, invest money, make it a mini Monkland, as many of the people on Strathern and Ballantyne have told me, a little green, a little Victoria. The town council doesn't talk about that plan much these days. And so when I say let's make a plan, I'm really referring to the existing town plan. Let's get it done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question is directed to the candidates of seat number 2. I will start with Ms. Yulin to answer the question first. It's from Bruce Menorgan on Avon. It said, what would be your 3 priorities for the future of Montreal-West? Ms. Yulin, you have a minute.
3 priorities from the future of Montreal-West. Well, again, I don't think it's any surprise for me to say that the rec center, we've got a grant, as I mentioned, $12.5 million, and but that is just the beginning. We need to raise a number of funds for that. We need to get some proper consultation done for that. So that's a huge project, and that's going to be a project that frankly dominates a lot of what we're doing in the town. That's one of my priorities. I'm going to go back again to the environmental portfolio to say that I feel very strongly that Montreal-West is the kind of town where we've got a well-educated population. Frankly, we're a fairly affluent population. We should be leaders on the environment. We should be punching above our weight on that file. And I'd like to see more done with respect to sustainability in our town. So that would be a big priority for me. And lastly, I would say, again, in communication. We've talked a lot about transparency, but for me, it's not just about transparency. It's about hearing what folks have to say and what they want us to do. So a lot of communication goes out from the town. A lot of the things I listed a moment ago were things that we devised to express what's happening in the town, but we need to have more ability to learn from you and what you want us to do for the town. So I think we need to put mechanisms in place in the next 4 years that will help that happen. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think it's a great question. I really think there's more than 3, 6 or 8 right now. Back to revitalization of the town center. I think that really reflects the town. When I express how I feel about a resident living in this town, I love this town like many residents do and are not afraid to say it. When we go to our town, we have angry merchants who don't understand why the town is not helping them out. Especially post-COVID, things are very, very difficult. It would be perfect for the new council to focus on that, as many other cities are worried about their downtown post-COVID. But last 10 years, it looks abandoned. It's an eyesore. Things have to change. Traffic control, I think, is a lifestyle issue and an environmental issue for many people in the town. As I said earlier, we have a legal right to take measures to improve the safety on our side streets. We have the legal right to control the traffic flow at rush hour on Westminster itself. We have to get people to change their habits coming from Côte Saint-Luc. They should take Cavendish. Everyone knows this. It's logic, it's common sense. They have to take Cavendish to the new interchange, $250 million interchange at Saint-Jacques by Canadian Tire. The days where Westminster is used as through traffic have to be numbered. And the last thing is really the development and densification of the town. We know that if we don't go in that direction, our taxes will go up. But given that it's an inevitability, the culture of the council and the way the town approaches residents around that development has to change. There has to be consultation, there has to be dialogue. Incidents like the Strathern parking lot have to stop. The problem with the Strathern undermines the confidence in that residents have in the council to take hard decisions. You have to understand that where there are points where confidence can be undermined, you have to be very careful about those decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question we have comes from Catherine Watkins-Menorgan. It's directed to the candidates of seat 1. So I'll ask the candidates of seat 2 to mute yourself, please. And we'll start with Ms. Small-Pennefather to answer this question first. We are in a climate emergency. How would you direct the Public Works Department of Montreal-Ouest to reduce its fossil fuel consumption to levels close to those of 1990? Ms. Small-Pennefather?
Thank you so much for that question. So in my job at Parks Canada, we respond to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change Canada. And as I mentioned in my opening remarks, COP26 is coming up this weekend. And it's a big thing going on, right? We're trying to reduce our zero emissions by 2050, by half century. That takes a tremendous amount of effort. And as a small town, we actually can be smarter in the way that we work. Smarter in the sense that we can be more sustainable with green procurement, with using vehicles that are smarter and friendly as well to the environment. We had to retrofit when I was director of Quebec Waterways on Lachine Canal, Chambly Canal, Saint-Ours, Sainte-Anne. We actually took vehicles and retrofitted them so they were greener, giving less emissions. We all know that we had to reduce our carbon footprint as well. And I think as a small town, we can work smarter and we can be more efficient in our operations. So it's really important that as we move forward, I think that could be one action that I would take, is definitely look at how we can have our vehicles being more sustainable for public works. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Averman, can we get your thoughts on this?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Catherine, for the question. The environment and climate change is obviously a very important issue. As a father of a young child, it's incredibly important to me that we give them a world that their generation, their kids' generation can live in, that climate change hasn't really negatively affected. I am not an expert in climate change or environment, but what I am is committed to helping the environment and committed to learning on how to help the environment. If I were elected, I would work closely with our counselors, with Ms. Torres and Ms. Feeney and the mayor to learn and educate myself and figure out ways and commit ways to lower our pollution that we give with our town council, with our public works. The cars are definitely one of those items, and yeah, I'm committed to learn about it and to implement new and innovative strategies, not only from our town, but from other towns, and to do the research. But at the moment, I'm not an expert in climate change or the environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now ask you the candidates of seat 1 to mute yourselves, because the next question is directed to the candidates of seat 2. Mr. Feldman, I'll ask you to take a first stab at the answer by unmuting yourself. The question comes from Julia Scott on Strathern North, asking, Strathern Park looks tidy enough on Monday morning when Public Works shows up, only because a resident has taken it upon himself to go around every evening and weekend mornings picking up garbage, sorting the lost and found items, and tramping down the garbage cans. Otherwise, garbage is left strewn around, the bins are overflowing, and the nighttime animals get into it, making the mess worse. Now that parks are being used more frequently for social events, what can be done to keep them clean over the weekends? Mr. Feldman, you have the next minute.
Well, people will generate a lot of waste in parks, and over the weekend, if we have fewer employees in the town who are working, well, how do you keep parks clean? You have to have more bins, clearly. You have to have perhaps people working Sunday nights to clean up. I think it's a lifestyle issue. On Monday morning, no one wants to see garbage strewn everywhere. And, really, I would fault the council, because the role of the council really is to exercise oversight. They don't do the work of the town. They oversee the work of the town. And, if there are, ongoing complaints about garbage in the parks, I'm just surprised that the councilors don't pick up on that and require performance from our town staff. I think it's unacceptable that garbage is everywhere. And, perhaps COVID, you could cut some slack a little bit because people are working from home. We understand that, but generally speaking, in 2021, there shouldn't be garbage everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yulin, would you like to add your comments for the next minute?
Certainly. Thank you very much for the question. Well, during COVID, there are an awful lot more people using the parks. That's correct. And we need to get more bins out there and perhaps have more staff looking after that on the weekend. I can't honestly tell you what our regimen is for the parks, so I won't make something up. I would imagine that if you notified Public Works or notified the councillor in charge of Public Works, we would see to it that more bins got put out, or there was a crew put on Fridays or possibly the weekend. We do have weekend crews, for instance, in the winter, who do work for snow clearing and such, and we could look at that if that was necessary. But I would say that we've had a number of requests for things as you're describing, when it has an awful lot to do with what people have been going through lately with COVID. So that people are using the parks more, as they say, and there's more garbage. That said, it's not acceptable. And I thank you for bringing it to our attention, and we'll make sure we do something about it. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you very much. I'll ask the candidates of seat 2 to mute yourselves, because the next question is going back to seat 1, and we'll ask Mr. Aberman to take the first answer for this question from Carol Foster on Westminster North. Question is, the town has bylaws which specifically prohibit the riding of bicycles on the town sidewalks. There are also signs on Westminster prohibiting this action. Complaints of the many violations of these regulations are frequent, since they can sometimes endanger pedestrians. We are told the town is helpless to enforce these bylaws because only the police have the authority to ticket moving vehicle infractions. How would you handle this dilemma? Mr. Aberman, you have the next minute.
Thank you, Ms. Foster. Security and safety is very important to all of us. And I understand that there are bylaws prohibiting bicycles from driving on the sidewalks on Westminster. I would have to look into how we can enforce that. It doesn't really make sense to have a bylaw that is unenforceable. What's the point of having a rule if you can't, enforce that rule? I'd have to look into it, and I'd be willing to look into that to see how we could change things so that Montreal-West Public Security does have the right to give infractions, because I know that's not something that the police SPVM would find the time to do. A suggestion I could have is putting increased public security officers on the streets at peak times and reminding the bicyclists politely that they're not supposed to be on the sidewalks. But more importantly than that is that we have a bylaw that all bicyclists in Montreal-West have to wear a helmet. I find that as a more pressing security issue for a bicyclist. If we have, again, a bylaw that we can't enforce, what's the point of having the bylaw? So I would try to make a greater police, public security presence to inform our residents and to speak to them, not to threaten them, not to be rude, but to politely remind them that they should be wearing a helmet for their own safety, and that biking on the sidewalks, especially where a lot of senior people do walk to go to those commerces, could be dangerous and hurtful to them. So thank you for that question. And yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Aberman. Ms. Small-Pettifalter, would you like to address the question?
Sure. Thank you for that question as well. Yes, safety and security are paramount. And I have been in that very same situation where I've been on the sidewalk and somebody is approaching at a significant speed on the sidewalk. And I really think, we've had bylaws as well on Lachine Canal where actually the police did have to be the ones who would ticket, even though that we had park wardens. And that's about collaboration with police services and increasing that collaboration with police services to make sure that, we have safe use of our sidewalks. It's about multi-use. It's about respect, mutual respect. And like my candidate Eric had also mentioned, is it's really about educating the community. And I think, if our public security is unable to issue tickets or fines, that the role can be one of education and letting people know that they shouldn't be riding their bikes on the sidewalks, and to politely ask them if they are seen riding their bike on the sidewalk to please, move to the street where the bike should be. And again, seniors and I have been in situations as well where cyclists don't stop at stop signs. Trying to cross the street as pedestrian can be very dangerous just with the cars, but also sometimes our cyclists also have to be made aware that their behavior on the road can have a significant impact to those people who are in our town that are trying to use the sidewalk to navigate, going into commercial stores as well. So I think there needs to be a heightened awareness on how we move this forward, and to make sure there is a mutual respect for everybody who is in the town, whether you're walking, whether you're biking, or whether you're using a car, that people are aware of the potential dangers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm having technical difficulties with my video, so please apologize. My apologies if you can't see me, but I am still here. The next question is directed to is from Julia Scott on Strathern North, and it's directed towards the candidates of seat 2. I'll ask Ms. Yulin for you to answer it first. The question is, when EXO reconfigure the train stations such that the trains from Saint-Jérôme are now only accessible from track 3, making it inconvenient to access them from the south and west of town, it is also not possible to purchase fares on that track. Was the town consulted? Why can't those trains open their doors on both sides to allow access from tracks 2 and 3? Ms. Yulin?
Well, that's interesting. I have to say, I don't know that I have really an answer for you on that one. I don't know why EXO won't open the doors on both sides. I mean, I have some information about a new station exit that they're going to be building shortly, so I can give you some information about that. And to be honest, I don't know that it will truly answer your question. But certainly we could put that question to EXO and on your behalf. So the information I have about the station entry is that they will be building a new entry to the station to exit out onto Sherbrooke Street, so that people won't have to cross over at the level crossing, and it will help immensely with the pedestrian traffic there. So it is possible that you would have an easier time on that third track if you could simply use that exit then to the station and get yourself out onto Sherbrooke. But again, I don't honestly have very much information about EXO and the raison d'etre for going on track 3 as opposed to 1 and 2, and why they open their doors as opposed to when they wouldn't. So it wouldn't be fair for me to answer on their behalf, but I respect the question, and certainly if you want to contact me or other councillors after this meeting, perhaps we can get an answer for you from EXO. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin. Mr. Feldman, would you like to add some comments to the question?
Yeah, so thank you to Julius for the question. I don't take that train, so I don't know the evolution of the way the doors have opened and closed on the trains when they arrive in the station, coming from the South Shore, the West, or from downtown. I have for many years because I lived next to the school. I'm always worried about the large number of students at Royal West who pile in there starting at 7:30 in the morning. So I would hazard a guess that they're trying to increase the level of security for all those students. They're one of the largest users of that of the Mo-West train station. I would say that if you were to read the 2009 town plan when it was originally written, there's some discussion. There was an old discussion, as we know, about burying the tracks and that kind of thing. And there was a hope that there would be an airport shuttle that would allow some investment. We know that's not going to happen now, but it is an occasion, I think, to strengthen ties or communication with that are part of our, there is a big push by the provincial government, for example, to have the schools used more by the town. There's a brand new gym at Royal West. There's Edinburgh, there's Valentine. But what I'm getting at, generally speaking, is that we have these silos, municipal silos that have built up over the years. We have to break them down because Montreal-West can benefit from those services more if they're more coordinated, if we do more consultation about how they're used. And if we pierce through the concrete wall to EXO, I'm sure we'll find somebody who's willing to work with us on a permanent basis. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feldman. I'll now ask the candidates of seat 2 to mute themselves. We'll go back to the last of the questions that were asked in advance and submitted to the informer. The last question is directed to the candidates of seat 1 from Linda Hammerschmidt on Valentine North. What is your position on setting aside specific times from June to September for dogs with their owners to be able to go to the splash pads in town to cool off from the heat, given they still have to wear fur coats in summer? Ms. Small-Pennefather, I believe the floor is yours to answer first.
Okay, thank you, Linda, for your question. And I know that for those of us who have our furry pets, we want to make sure that they're also accommodated in the town. Everybody's a taxpayer, and I know people would really like an opportunity to make sure that it's part of, also being a dog owner, is to making sure that they have access to ways. Not every home in Montreal-West has air conditioning, so it can get quite hot. As you know, our summers have been quite climate crisis, so our summers are hotter than they normally are. But I do believe that there is a way perhaps that we can look at how we can reserve a potential area that would have to be discussed more fulsomely, of course, because there's obviously hygiene issues that would have to be discussed. And we know that, children who use those facilities as well, to make sure there aren't any issues or conflict. But as you said, a potential reservation system, or as we're starting to build in other areas, is this something that we could look specifically, perhaps installing something similar in the dog park? Those splash pads I know are super, super welcome during the heat waves for children. And I think that's, it's a really interesting point that you raised, Linda, to see if there's a way that we can accommodate both of our furry friends and our children as well in the town. It's something I'm willing definitely to look at, Linda, to see if it's something that we can actually do. So I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bennefather. I'd like to turn it over to Mr. Aberman for comments.
Thank you, Linda. I've had a dog since I was 7 years old, so for over 30 years now. So I really understand the importance a dog has to a family, and that they're not just pet, but they're part of the family. Unfortunately, however, I don't really believe that the dog should be using the same splash pads as our children. They are animals after all, and I've seen even this past summer, too many dogs have had bowel movements in the splash pads that weren't picked up. Unfortunately, I really also don't think that our hard-earned tax-paying dollars really need to go towards a dog splash pad when there are so many other issues that we need to deal with infrastructure, with the rec center, with revitalization of Westminster. So while I can't really get on board with the idea of the dog splash park, it's something that could be talked about and we could discuss at different committees and public hearings moving forward. But my initial reaction is that that's not really what our tax-paying dollars should go to, even though our furry friends are very important members of our family. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aberman. I think my screen is blinking there. Apologies. See if that stops in a second. I will try to do that again. There we go. So we now move on to the live Q&A that everybody can access at the information you see on the left-hand side. The first question comes from Alex Yu. It's addressed to all candidates, and given we have some time left in our session tonight, I will ask all four of you to address it 1 minute each. The question is, if elected, can you provide one example of action you can do or bring up to improve the commercial sector of our town? For example, more parking, how can we beautify Westminster, etc. This is Alex on Westminster South. So I'd like to start with the candidates of seat 2, and I will ask Ms. Yulin to address the question first.
Sure, I'd be happy to. To let you know, Julie, when we looked at the questions, at least when I did, it wasn't showing Alex's question. So I don't know if I didn't think his question was the first one to come in. I'm happy to answer it, but that wasn't what was showing up on the screen. So at least for me, I don't know how if the other candidates saw that or the public at large. Thank you very much.
We'll make sure that that's fixed on the next one. I'll validate first.
Sure. Thanks very much for your question, Alex. Well, I have to say that we have had to stall. Our plan for Westminster beautification has stalled somewhat because of COVID. So I hope you understand that. That being said, we have done, I think, an awful lot so far to help beautify Westminster and attract people to the street. Everything from new lights to benches to trees being planted to the terraces. We have a street fair now every year. Of course, that's had to be put aside because of COVID, but it'll happen again, hopefully in 2022. Personally, it would be no surprise to anyone if I say that what I'd really love to see on Westminster would be some trees properly planted. I think the merchants have also asked for better lighting, and that's something we can look into. The lighting is beautiful, I think, that goes across the street, but that's not the same as proper lighting. So I would say that's something in collaboration with the Merchants Association that we've looked at. And I mean, essentially, what I'd like, my vision going forward would be to continue to work with the Merchants Association, see what you folks want and what would best help you in that area, and then we move forward with that plan. So I'll leave it there, and hopefully we'll get to speak about this in future. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin. Mr. Feldman, would you like to add your comments for the next minute?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Alex, for the question. You know, I would say that the number one issue that could improve Westminster right now is controlling the traffic. You know, I hear a lot that people say that there's nothing that can be done. We've tried everything. You know, you've heard me talk about traffic earlier this evening. I believe that there's a lot to be done about traffic. I think that it really demoralizes shoppers who go there, and I guess the merchants themselves. When Westminster becomes completely inaccessible for an hours at a time, and traffic is traffic, and traffic is the lifeblood of retail, clearly. But when it's just through traffic, that's what we have to target. Beyond that, the parking, I think this, you know, I really would like to see a commitment by the council, whoever's elected, to lay aside the Strathern parking issue. I think that it's created a lot of alarm and distress among the merchants. And although the council may want to work with the merchants, they don't appear to be talking with them. So, you know, again, that theme of dialogue. And just moving on to what small towns with small little commercial strips do to beautify or to revitalize their areas is that I think we even have a bylaw that's sitting on the books that would help merchants, for example, adopt a common theme for their signs. You see that in little towns all over New England. I have family in New England. I love the little towns, and they work on them. And our
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. I'm going to have to stop you there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Aberman, you have the next minute.
Thank you, and thank you, Alex. And it's an important question on how we could revitalize Westminster and attract commerce to the area. Unlike some of the other candidates here, I don't see it being mutually exclusive of keeping the parking lot on Strathern and developing on top of it. Part of a public-private partnership is that the municipality can dictate to private developers certain requirements in order to issue building permits, and that could be leaving parking, indoor, underground parking available to people coming to use Westminster. I've seen it done in other places, and it can be done here. I think that I haven't had a chance to speak to many of the merchants, and I'm sorry for that, but I will be coming to speak to you. I think that we have a good base, we have a good foundation to make this a mini Monkland. I mean, we go to Monkland to go to the restaurants, even though there's terrible traffic there and it could be blocked up for hours at a time. There's no reason why, especially with the through traffic, with 13,000 cars that come by Westminster and Sherbrooke every day, we can't encourage more commerce, more visitors to our area. And I think that just working with the current merchants, which I'm very excited to do, we could get through this, and we could use the action plan already in place, and we could do more public consultations and figure out more ways to get commerce to Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aberman. And finally, Ms. Small-Benfather, would you like to close out with your comments?
Sure. Thank you very much for your comments, Alex. And you add beautification as well because of your anchor of your commercial establishment on Westminster. And it's where people go by and people are happy. And I see that. You write wonderful messages on your boards to people, and I think people really love walking down Westminster, seeing that. We need to find more anchor points within on Westminster. And I think, when we talk about the traffic and traffic calming in the big picture, perhaps sometimes the way we can do some traffic calming, and I'm not a traffic expert, but it's perhaps having parking on both sides of a one-way street possibly could help eliminate some of the traffic issues we have. And that will help obviously bring some, parking onto some of the other streets as well, but that would have to be looked at by a traffic engineer and a traffic expert. But again, it's bringing in and attracting the commercial base as well. And I think it's really important as we move forward as a town and planning for the future and doing that. We want people on Westminster. We want people to be excited about being on Westminster. I think some things have been done, and this is where the innovation comes into play. And I think we could be innovative in working with the Merchants Association and beautifying Westminster. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates. I will attempt to share my screen again. Hopefully you can all see the question at the top here from Joanna Dewey. Can I get a nod from the candidates? Do you see that first question here? the top. The question is for seat 1 candidates, and we'll ask Ms. Small-Pennefather to answer first. It is, can you share your thoughts and ideas for how to ensure a robust and transparent consultation process in regard to the new recreation center, especially given the current public health situation?
Thank you so much for your thoughtful question, Ms. Dewey. Definitely with regards to the grant that's been secured was a few years ago, and the pandemic has completely changed our reality. We're actually not even post-pandemic yet. We're hopefully coming out of a 4th and final wave. Costs have gone up with regards to materials. Costs have gone up with regards to labor. We know that there's a shortage of labor. So I think we need to revisit some of the things with regards to how we would move forward with a recreation center. And I think that involves, of course, engaging the public, listening as well to the public and the residents of what they want to see. And how do we find that happy medium moving forward? And I think it's really important in looking at, capital costs, operation costs, maintenance costs, making sure that they're clear, that they're evidence-based, that they're not anecdotal, I think is really important. So I would definitely be open to having discussions and continue to have a consultation process throughout. I think it's really important as we're moving forward with this recreation center, if we're going to have a top tier facility, in what is actually going to be included in that. And dollar amounts have changed, right? And I think it's really important that we recognize that and we're transparent about that. And that's one of the things that I would do as a member of the council, is to make sure that those costs are well communicated and transparent with the residents of Montreal-West. So thank you for your question.
Thank you. Mr. Averman?
Yes, thank you for your question as well, Joanna. In my professional past, part of my job as a developer was holding public consultations, was listening to the residents, listening to the town councillors of the municipalities I've been working in, and adjusting my plans based on feedback. And I don't see how that would change if I were elected town councillor. I'm used to the public consultations, and I'm amenable. I mean, in one of my projects, we lowered our density from over 200 homes to 152 homes just based on the feedback of the residents. Now, you could imagine 50 homes, it's a huge loss of profit, but holding the public consultation and hearing back from the residents of what they want and what's good, that's what drives me. I love building communities. I love making things better, and I can't do that by myself. I'm not a tyrant, and I can't say we have to do this, we have to do that. It's only with talking to people and hearing through ideas, flushing through ideas, that this can be done. And hopefully, as Mr. Legault has said, come in the new year, kids will be getting vaccinated, will be allowed in public places again, and will be able to do these public consultations. And I really look forward to that part of this job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next question comes from Peter Cooney. What can the new candidates do regarding all the increased traffic on Avon, including the trucks? There's another part to this question that says, a new broom, I hope, will sweep cleaning. I'm not sure if that's part of the question. Candidates, the new candidates, that's 3 of you, will do your best with this question. We'll go in reverse order. Mr. Feldman, I'd like to direct this question to you first.
Thank you, Mr. Cooney, for the question. I think it's a great question. Generally, I find that there was over the last 5 years during the Turcotte construction, there was a buildup and a habit-forming traffic pattern that went away a little bit, I think, during the lockdown, when there was, frankly, not a lot of traffic on the streets. But as the lockdowns started opening up, and now I guess we're probably half or 2/3 opening up, those traffic patterns surprisingly came right back. Down Avon, and by the way, we're very lucky to have those stoplights there. I hope that we keep them, because they do tend to keep things under control. They're still temporary standards, but I think they're sorely needed. But in general, what has come back is the same habit formed traffic pattern that developed during Turcotte. And I think that what the council needs to do is to take its legal power that we have from the Devil's Hill episode and really put down its foot and force people to change their habits. There are great shortcuts, as we know as drivers, many of us are. You can get down to the 20. I like to get down to the 20 and instead of going all the way to Saint Jacques. But if I'm coming from Côte Saint Luc, I should be on Cavendish. I should not be coming down Westminster. Those are the kind of habits that are taking a toll on our residential streets.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. I have to cut you off
And
again.
there are a lot of trucks down through. We have to basically take control. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Cooney.
Thank you. Mr. Aberman, would you like to take it?
Yes, and thank you for the question. I somewhat agree with Mr. Feldman. Habits changed during the Turcotte project, but now the Turcotte project is complete. We have a great new intersection on Saint Jacques. The only way really to stop the traffic is to inconvenience people from taking it. It can't be convenient for them. It can't be easy for them to do it. And as Mr. Feldman said, we do have the power to regulate traffic, and we have to find creative ways to make it less convenient for people to use our streets as cross-through streets. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous, the amount of commercial vehicles going on Strathern, going on Brock, going on Ballantyne, going on Avon. There's no need for it. We are a residential community. We are not St. Henry. We're not Point St. Charles. We're Montreal-West, and we have the power to control it. We have to seize that power, and we have to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Small-Pennefather, would you like to add to this?
Sure. I also, I'm aligning myself as well with comments made by Mr. Aberman and Mr. Feldman as well. You know, it's changing culture. It's difficult to change culture and shift that mindset. And I agree that, you know, you have to be able to shift and change people's patterns. You know, dealing with the Lachine Canal, our north-south traffic was never built for heavy vehicles and the volume of traffic that go through a number of those municipalities and boroughs. And it's really sitting down with the partners. I mean, we have municipalities adjacent to us, and I think it's opening up that communication and making sure that we have communities of practice where we talk about traffic and how we can ease the burden of traffic coming through Montreal-West. And I agree. I think, you know, I've seen signs before about local traffic only, and I know that those are difficult to enforce. But I think in certain periods of the day when there's high traffic volumes, perhaps that's something that we could look at as a potential measure as well. But I agree that it's really about changing people's habits and making sure that our, you know, this remains a jewel in the crown of Montreal is really making sure that we control that traffic. And like I said, I think we really need to undertake a solid traffic study with someone with the credentials to do so, and looking at an overall urban plan for Montreal-West. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on to the next question. Next question is from Daniel Marcuse, is directed to Mr. Feldman. Why do you want to become a town councillor when you are already a school commissioner and I presume you have a day job? How will you find the time to devote yourself to the councillor's job? Mr. Feldman?
Yeah, I think that's the second time the question came up, but you know, let me say that you know, I've been an advocate for children for many, many years now. That's what I do. I organize parents all over the city to work on their governing boards, to get resources for special needs children, that kind of thing. I've done that for many years. It's a joy, and it'll be a joy to do it at Montreal-West. But let me make it absolutely clear that my golden rule as an elected official is that I never interfere in the administration and day-to-day running of any institution that I'm part of. At the school board, we have a mayor, Mr. Masella, who runs the town. He has administrators. He has staff in different departments. The role of the council, as I said before, is not to micromanage the affairs of the town. Their role is to set policy. We've been talking about policy all night, whether it's a dog park or traffic or you know, the town plan. That's the role of a And the day where you have a councillor who's micromanaging, getting the mayor upset, and they're not dealing with issues dealing directly with residents, that's the point where the town will become dysfunctional. But look, Montreal-West, I think, works well because we have a mayor who takes control of the administration, and we can discuss and debate policy all we want. Of a counselor to micromanage. So it's not a full-time job for sure. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next question comes from Louise Chenvert. It's directed to all candidates, but a similar question was addressed already to the candidates of seat 1. So I'll address this question to the candidates of seat 2, starting with Ms. Yulin. Question is, in order to increase safety on Westminster and reduce bicycles on sidewalks, are you in favor to implementing bike paths on side streets as Strathern and Brock? Ms. Yulin?
Sure. Thanks, Louise, for your question. I'm very much in favor of bike paths. I wouldn't say it would necessarily be on Strathern or Brock. That would be to be determined. But, the agglomeration has a master plan of bike paths, and we are certainly included in that. And we now have, as you perhaps know, down on Brock with the new, perhaps the new apartments down there. There's a beautiful bike path that travels that way and sort of ends in Montreal-West and then continues on to Lachine. So I think it's essential that we have bike paths, proper bike paths here in Montreal-West. We would have to work with the agglomeration, though, to be part of that sort of master plan so that people know where they're going and they know when they get to Montreal-West where they're going to go. So it ties in to some extent with bicycles on the sidewalk. We want to prevent that, and we're working to do that by putting up more signage and painting on the sidewalk and other such things that are in progress. But bike paths are necessary, I think, in Montreal now, and certainly we should have them in Montreal-West. That would obviously have to be in consultation with citizens on streets that they would be going through, but I am all in favor of bike paths in Montreal-West. Thanks for your question.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman?
Yes, thank you, Louise, for the question. I spent many years on the steering committee of Les Amis de Meadowbrook, and I can tell you that we spend an awful lot of time talking about bike paths, and not just talking about bike paths and for people who ride bikes in Montreal-West, but as Ms. Yulin said, how to join those two ends, because Montreal-West is kind of an odd bird as a shape. And we don't have green spaces where you would put a bike path next to it in order to make those connections. But look, we can't talk about bike paths without talking about the future of Meadowbrook itself, because eventually, and I think the town should get a little bit more involved, talking with the neighbors, Lachine and future of that, because it would I think have an impact on how you would lay out bike paths. As for bike paths on the streets, on the residential streets, you only have to be on Ballantyne or Strathern, one of the other streets during the day, to see that currently bike riders are running the gauntlet because they're very exposed to the cars who sometimes are speeding, a lot of through traffic. Children ride bikes too. So, I think it's also tied into the traffic thing. And I'll just add a word about on the sidewalks. I don't know in the summer if our public security guys are doing walking beats. I met one the other night who asked me questions. What was I doing out doing door to door? Was I soliciting? Well, yes, officer, I was soliciting, but for votes, not for but nevertheless, again, we've talked about bike paths in Montreal-West for years and years and years, but we haven't done a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. We'll move on to the next question. It's an interesting question that's directed to all candidates, and given we have the time, we'll skip your thoughts from each of you, starting with Mr. Aberman in seat 1. The question is from Abby Shayevitz. Apologies if I did not say that correctly. The system of municipal elections in Montreal-Ouest needs to be updated so councillors don't run for a seat, but are elected based on the highest number of votes. What are your thoughts on this? Would you consider increasing our council to 6 members? Mr. Aberman, your thoughts?
Thank you, Abby, for the question. I just look at it over here on my other screen. It's an interesting suggestion about having just the total votes for the seats and not having it by just each seat. Although I'm sure that it's done this way for a reason. It's done this way for a while. I'd be happy to hear your thoughts onto why you think that it would be better for just the total number of votes. So the 5 of us and the 2 of us that get the most votes get the seat. In terms of increasing the council to 6 members, I don't really think that that's necessary for the population that we have. I think that the 4 councillors and the mayor is adequate representation for our total number of population. And also remember that adding 2 more councillors is also adding 2 more salaries to the city's budget. And like I said in my introduction, I don't really like spending money unnecessarily. So I don't really think that increasing the number of councillors to 6 would be a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Small-Pennefather, would you add anything to what Mr. Aberman already shared?
Absolutely, and I do agree with a number of the points that that Mr. Aberman raised. I will say this is that if you do go on Elections Quebec, you will see that there are actually 6 seats allocated for the town of Montreal-Ouest. So I believe at a point in time there were probably actually 6 seats. I'm assuming perhaps it's when we were with the city of Montreal perhaps. But this is something I would definitely look into. But I would agree that perhaps the size of the population doesn't merit more than 4 seats. But as we're growing with more responsibility, we want to make sure that all the councillors are doing a good job at what they're doing. If it merits a discussion perhaps of expanding beyond the 4 seats, but it's definitely something that would have to be looked at more closely. And I would also agree with the fiscal responsibility of ensuring that we don't add more financial pressures where they're not necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Yulin, would you like to add on to those comments?
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. So just to clarify, Montreal-Ouest always had 4 seats. In fact, when we demerged, or when we merged, we lost all our seats. We lost our town. And then when we demerged, we were initially supposed to get 6 seats because that was the minimum number of seats that you could have as a municipality. But we petitioned the government of Quebec to ask that we stay as 4 seats because we've always had 4 seats. And, Eric pointed out the cost factor. And so we decided we could run just as well with the 4 seats we've always had. So that's how it came to 4 seats. I don't know why Elections Quebec would have us listed as 6. I have to say, having worked on the council now for quite a while, 16 years, there are pros and cons to having 4 seats versus 6 seats. I would say the pros of 4 seats are you work as a team and you work really well with a team of 5 people. You can get things done and you can come to agreement in a way that it would be perhaps more difficult with 6 people or 7 people with the mayor. But 6 seats would mean we'd all have to do a little bit less. So I'm fine doing what I do now. I'm okay with 4 seats and doing the work I have. So for me, I'd still stick with 4. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman, anything to add?
Yeah, thank you. If you were to move to the 6 seats, I tend to fall with the others. What's your objective in adding, 2 more people to the council? I would say that a council that has 4 councillors and doesn't consult is the same as a council with 6 seats that doesn't consult. I mean, there's really no impact on the town. I don't mean by that our current councillors with councils really they work. If they work together, if you add more people, there's also a higher possibility of conflict too. I mean, that's just a fact. At the school board, we have 10 commissioners. We cover more than half the island. That's that's plenty. It makes you work in a certain way. That being said, the other question was about the mode of election, whether you want to have it a race with whoever gets the most votes. I'm not sure that's an option that Elections Quebec allows. I'd have to look into it, because we are in a kind of a hybrid system here that's really related to the size of the town. I mean, it would be very difficult to parcel the town up into little districts. They can barely do that in Côte Saint-Luc, which has a larger footprint. So with these kinds of things, you have to be very wary of the blowback, the consequences of making that kind of a change. So maybe if it's not broken, why try to fix it? But that's a
Thank
debate,
you.
whether it's broken or not. Thank you.
Coming back to the next question. It's from Barbara Malcolmson Bailey. If you could have decided about traffic flow during the digging up of Westminster, concurrent with the digging up of the entire length of Fenwick, would you have opened Easton to two-way traffic for the duration of the infrastructure work? Why or why not? Mr. Feldman, I'd like to direct this question to your seat and start with you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Malcolmson Bailey. And I'll start with a confession that on Sunday, I drove through Devil's Hill. I don't think I have ever done that before, but I drove out and I came back. When I came back home, I did that. And the reason was there was a gas leak down at where the digging is going by Town Hall, and they blocked Ainsley, and they blocked Easton at the Town Hall as well. And nobody warned any of the residents over there. I'm sure Ms. Yulin was aware of that as well. No one warned us, and we were trapped, and there were just cars driving around in circles. And I finally went up to one of the police there, and I said, "Look, I'm just warning you. I'm going down through Devil's Hill. Don't try to stop me." So they okayed it. But the fact is that there was actually work going on at Devil's Hill. And I don't think that, and even up at Fenwick, or even maybe as far as Campbell, there's digging going on. I don't think it's possible. And we have to remember that on the other side of Devil's Hill, there are a lot of children and a lot of residential streets there that I know there was some controversy with our neighbors there when it was first blocked. But when I say that I don't want all this through traffic coming through in my section of the town over by Royal West, I also think about our neighbors on the other side of Devil's Hill. We can't just dump all our traffic down there, or we'd be hypocrites. So I don't think there's a solution other than what's being done now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Feldman. Ms. Yulin?
Thanks very much for the question, Barbara. So to my understanding, you're actually asking not about Devil's Hill, but you're asking about the lights at Easton, whether or not we should be able to go out through Easton, not just in to Easton, and whether or not that should have been opened when they were redoing Fenwick, and then of course we had the work on Westminster. And I would agree that that would have been a great thing to do. I would have appreciated that as being a resident of that neighborhood. But I want to point out, we did ask about that, and with the engineers in the project, and we looked at the configuration of the lights. And unfortunately, the lights are such that it will only let traffic go down Saint Jacques or go down Westminster. In other words, we would need an additional light to allow traffic to exit via Easton, so that was not a feasible alternative at that time. And that's why, unfortunately, we weren't able to do that for the work that's about 3 weeks long on Westminster. But that's the answer I have for you, and I hope that answers your question. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin. We have a comment shared by Julian Mazzoni saying, in regards to the question of the Saint-Jérôme train about the doors not opening on tracks 3 and 2, it's because track 2 has a fence prohibiting the opening of the train doors on track 2. Thanks. Just wanted to share that with everybody. The next question comes from Anne Lynch Percival. Question is for all candidates. And we'll start with seat 1, starting with Miss Small Pennefather. What is your position on the development of the Strathern parking lot?
Thank you for that question. And as I've been, campaigning in the neighborhood, there's a lot of divisive issues. And this development is one of those issues. We have to do things that are scalable for our town. I think that we have to do things that are open and transparent. We had management plans for all of the canals across Quebec. And doing public consultations. And that's how we developed our management plans, which were legislative requirement. And I think that's really important as we move forward and we talk about planning for the future. I think these, we talk about the problems with parking, we talk about problems with traffic, we talk about not having, a tax base beyond what our residents pay and looking at improving that industrial tax base, which we don't really have a lot of options because we're such a small town. I think we have to be responsible in the ways that we look at any potential future development. You remember the controversy when Pharmaprix was going to the corner of Westminster, and there was a lot of controversy around that. So I think we really need to have that open dialogue. And again, like many of my colleagues around the table, that public consultation factor is really important. And I think people want, in our town to be open and transparent in the way that we move our projects forward. And I think that's something that I definitely would like to work on in council. And I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Averman, the floor is yours.
The redevelopment of a lot like Strathern is my specialty. I know from experience that as a town, we hold a lot of weight, as I've said before, in what can and cannot be built on that lot. We can dictate it. I would suggest moving forward with a planned urban development. Now, what a planned urban development is, for those of you that don't know, it's when a town like ours does public consultations and a study to determine what the best use for a parcel of land is moving forward. At that point, once the consultation is done and it's voted on and approved by the council, then the town could put the project up for bid, and it can attract developers, because developers already know, okay, the town is open to have this parking lot, for example, redeveloped into a row of townhouses with underground parking to serve the community and to serve the residents of the new project. By knowing what the town already wants, the developers still have to come in and go through the whole rezoning process and hold their own public consultations in terms of design and other aspects of it. But they know this ahead of time. It's not something that's thrown at them after they've already spent money and looking and researching the project. I think doing things like planned urban developments is the way to go to move forward. And I think that we could find a very creative solution for that lot via that mechanism. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman?
Yeah, thank you. And, thank you, Mr. Averman. When I say, let's make a plan, it's exactly what I'm talking about. But let's be careful about the traffic, because it's not just the question of underground parking, and the footprint, I'm not sure is big enough to have a useful underground parking if it were to include resident parking. But before we even get to there, what the residents want to talk about is densification. The real question is, do we want high density on our residential streets? Now, if you look at the plan and some of the recent proposed amendments to the plan, there's a lot of row house parking that's going to be down on what's currently zoned industrial, down on the bottom, I guess Ronald Drive and those areas, where they're not impacting existing, historic residential streets where we have people have been attracted by heritage housing. You know, are we going to start talking about granny flats in the backyards and that kind of thing? Look, you'll be surprised that we had a proposal on my end of town, just by Devil's Hill, right next to Devil's Hill, where there was a proposal to tear down a beautiful 1920s craftsman home. And the neighbors, to put it politely, they freaked out because they said, not only is that a brilliant example of a craftsman home, who talked about, you know, the Calgaryification of Montreal-West. They wanted to put in, I think, 3 or 4 different homes on that corner lot. So what people were saying was that that's not our Montreal-West. Now, Montreal-West, I think in the 50s or 60s, went through a period similar to now, where they needed to do infill development. And so you see a lot of incongruity, you know, a 20s house and then a 60s house and a 50s house. I'm sure there was a big debate about that, but that's where we're at right now. And before
Thank
we
you, Mr.
start
Feldman.
developing
Wrap up.
rather, we have to talk about densification and have consultation. Thank you very much, Madam Sean.
Thank you. Ms. Yulin?
Sure, thank you. So I'll just go to a point made earlier by Mr. Feldman with respect to the home on Easton that was to be redeveloped. What essentially happened there was a homeowner asked for a permit to demolish that building and put up another one, and we denied it because we had public consultations and people didn't want it, and so that was denied. And it's important to point out that people are talking about a development on Strathern, but there was no such development on Strathern. What was happening was a rezoning of that area to allow any number of things. And council insisted that before we could have such a rezoning, we would have to have a public consultation. The reason that was set aside was because during COVID, it was recognized that we couldn't have a proper consultation, and it wasn't the right time to be making this rezoning. So we've set it aside, and we'll certainly have, and the new council will certainly have, a proper public consultation for Strathern or any other lot that we decide needs to be rezoned or would like to be rezoned before we go forward with any project. And we would always do that and always have. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you. We're down to our last few questions. And question here is from Julian Mazzoni, and I'll direct it to the candidates of seat 1. Is the town going to use grass or turf for the new rec center soccer field? And in fact, actually, I'll open it up to all 4 candidates to see if anybody knows the answer first, because it's just maybe a tough question. Candidates of seat 1, do you have a comment on this?
Yeah, I've done some research. I've spoken to some people with some knowledge about the new rec center. Currently, all we have is a preliminary design. The town actually went out for tender for an architect engineer to build up plans for the rec center. So I think at this time it's a little bit too early to tell if it'll be grass or turf. I think that the council, whether I'm on it or whether anybody else is, will do the diligence to see what best suits our needs to decide what will be used on the field.
Thank you. Ms. Small-Pennefelder, anything to add?
No, I actually think Mr. Aberman gave a great answer. And I think this is all a part of, when we come down to using materials, we have to go back again and see, if there are advantages to something being more environmentally friendly. I'm all for that. So I just wanted to add that environmental factor in there again, in considering what kind of materials and what kind of procurement that we do now and in the future for the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yulin, Ms. Feldman. Anything to add in addition?
The only thing I would add is, without knowing very much about what is likely to happen there, I would, my knee-jerk reaction is to say that I would be very much against artificial turf. I would very much want to see natural turf there as it is now. But we shall see what we come up with respect to a design. But on first glance, I would say, Julian, that I would very much prefer natural turf. I think people generally prefer playing on natural turf, and I believe it's better for the environment. And that would probably get my vote if that were to come to council. Thanks very much for your question.
Thank you. Mr. Feldman, anything to add?
Yeah, on the question of natural turf, really, in other is the remaining amount of money that we need to access the grant is the real question. So when you look at the budget, is natural turf something that can be shoehorned into the budget? That's a real question. I would point to the field at Royal West High School. That was a natural turf field. There is cooperation between the town and Royal West to manage that field. It is used by our youth soccer teams throughout the summer. And, I would just, caution that in order to keep it looking good, it's always locked up. Do you need to lock up a natural turf field in order to preserve it? In this case, it would be to perhaps keep dogs off it, pick up soccer games from developing on there. I'm not sure, but I know it's very controversial in my end of town, the fact that it is always locked. I'm not saying that that means that you should go to natural turf. Frankly, I don't think that Montreal-West is large enough to have a large piece of real estate the size of a soccer team that's in turf. Environmentally, it's the same as just paving it. So I personally would be against it.
Thank you, everyone. Share the next question on the screen. It's from Julia Scott, and I'll direct it to the candidates of seat 1, given we had a question related to the trains earlier, and the candidates for seat 2 already addressed it. So starting with Ms. Small Pennefather, Julia asks, much of the discussion has been about traffic and environment. One way to reduce traffic and be more environmentally responsible would be to make public transit as convenient as possible. To have trains arrive at the station but not accessible if you are on 2 of the 3 tracks is frustrating. Your comments, please.
Sure, thank you. And I definitely have shared concerns with that. And it's funny, I ran into somebody who's running for council in another part of the city, and he's originally from Montreal-West, and he said, is the 162 still the only bus that goes down Westminster? So I think it's really about collaboration and working with partners and seeing what the needs of our community are and assessing those as we move forward. And again, it's planning for the future of our town, and it's working with EXO and other partners to make sure that if there are accessibility issues, that we have those addressed. And I think we need to share that information. I think part of the beauty of living in a small town is that you can share the information. And I applaud Councillor Yulin for opening up that communication dialogue in the town and instituting a number of ways and communication tools that we've used now. I think one of the great things about the pandemic, for instance, if you can look at a silver lining, is that we found a whole other way to communicate with residents and who didn't necessarily have the ability to attend a meeting in person. And I think that's innovative. And I think we have to be more innovative in those ways. And I agree with you that we can be more environmentally friendly if we have more service in the town and more accessibility as well. So that would be one of the things I would address on council. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aberman?
Hi, thanks, Julian. And it is a very good question. Part of my training at NYU, part of my program was directed specifically at transport-oriented communities. And that is building a community to, sorry, I lost the word for a second, to promote using the public transport and to promote businesses moving towards there. So you really, on your way to work, on your way back, everything that you need is a walking distance on a train or on a bus. If I were elected to council, I would want to work with EXO I'd like to open a strong line of communication with them and find ways that we can make the accessibility to the trains. I'm glad to hear that they're thinking of redoing entrances to the train station. And I think that we should, as a town, partner with them completely to make it better for our residents and make it easier for our residents to use the train, get to the buses. And hopefully one day, we won't be relying on cars so much and that we can be relying on public transportation. Thank you.
Thank you very much to both of you. We're on to our final question on the site. As a reminder to anybody who's listening right now, if you have a question, we'll ask you to post it here. Otherwise, we will move on to the closing comments by the candidates, starting with Mr. Feldman. But before we get to the closing comments, Mr. Feldman, you're on stage for the final question, which is from Barbara Tecker at Wolseley North, asking, she's a little uncomfortable with in your recurring attacks on the present council for their non-consultation. How do you propose to work with them as a team when 3 are already on the next council and you are seeming adversarial? Mr. Feldman.
Right, and thanks to Barbara for that question. I think that the values of transparency, dialogue in the town, and issues that are adversarial with respect to the current council even. Ms. Yulin just described the type of consultation that she does and has done. And I agree with that. I just happen personally to believe that we need far more. When, look, I hear door to door, I hear talking to my neighbors. They don't know what's going on in the town. They don't know a lot about the budget. They don't think there's a dialogue. They want more consultation. I think that you have to listen very carefully to your neighbors, to everyone in the town. And as Ms. Small-Pennefather just said, we've learned, unexpectedly, we've learned that there are amazing new communication tools like the one we're on right now, Zoom or Teams or whichever ones that you use in your work or your life with your family. So it's no longer an issue of trying to rent the town hall or the music room. A lot of the logistics that would allow for more consultation are now open to us. But we have, there has to be a culture. People know I spent, many years asking many questions to the mayor and the councillors at town hall. I think that we need to go beyond a question period at town hall. I think that we need to make it part of the culture of Montreal-West. Montreal-West is a small, beautiful place, as people take pains to say. We have a small scale. We're able to do that, and we should grab that opportunity. So I don't think it's adversarial in any way. I'm very enthusiastic about it, about more of it, and I would love to see more of it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, residents. I think we've addressed all the questions that you have submitted either in advance or live. So I think it's time to close out the hot seat section of this evening and move on to the prepared remarks that each of the candidates is allowed to share now in reverse order of those in which you were given for your introductions, which means, Mr. Feldman, you get the first opportunity to share your closing remarks before ending the event this evening. The floor is yours.
Well, I'm going to ad-lib it. I didn't make actual prepared remarks, but I just want to let people know that going door to door, of all the door to door that I've done in all the different neighborhoods of the town, the main issue is traffic. There's a great desire among the residents of the town for the council to take control of the cars that we have, as we've discussed here tonight, change the habits of people streaming in from, whether it's Côte St. Luc, Hampstead, NDG, people headed to the 20. All of those neighboring municipalities have been working very hard at redeveloping their town, increasing the level of affordable housing and so on. They've literally added thousands of units, whether in buildings, single-family homes, row houses. Just this evening, I was reading about Hampstead. They're going to add 12-story buildings all along Côte Saint-Luc. The future is traffic, and it's all going to come down Westminster. We need to start talking about what we're going to do, but we also, because we have the power, we also need to take action. So that is message number one for me. Number two is the theme that I developed at the very beginning was that this should be a child-friendly town. And when I say, I know Montreal-Ouest is child-friendly in many ways now, I think that it should be formalized. We have so many young families coming in there in the different neighborhoods of the town that we need to really embrace their needs and their views, and what in the age of social media, what young children need today, the rec center obviously, but in so many other different ways. I think by having attaching ourselves to something like the child-friendly town would really make a difference and would really help the council also to address issues that we've never even thought of before. Anyway, thank you so much to the Informer for setting this up. It came off beautifully, much better than I expected, and really congratulations, and thank you to all the candidates as well, and congratulations to the mayor and the other candidates on council who were acclaimed. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Feldman. Well said. Ms. Yulin, would you like to conclude your comments for this evening?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. En plus du centre récréatif, voici mes autres priorités pour les 4 prochaines années. I'll push for excellence in all family and municipal services, those things that likely brought you here in the first place. I'll strongly promote environmental initiatives to help address the climate crisis. I'll work on pressuring the government to open Cavendish and build that overpass on West Broadway, which is the only realistic and long-term solution to our chaotic level crossing. Et je vais continuer avec le travail qu'on commençait, investir dans les infrastructures, revitaliser Westminster, bien sûr, et aider les citoyens à se rapprochement de notre communauté et de notre ville. Merci beaucoup. Thank you very much. And I want to thank Julie and Heather for putting this event on. We were all a little bit nervous about how it would come off, but as Julian says, it has come off extremely well. I want to thank everybody out there who's been asking questions and listening to us tonight. And I want to urge you, please, please go out and vote. You can vote at Elizabeth Ballantyne School, everyone in the town, on October 31st, which is Halloween. It's easy to remember. If you're below the hump, you can vote on November 7th at Royal West Academy. And if you're above the hump, you can vote at Edinburgh School. So I hope you do. I hope you exercise your vote. And I hope to be back on council for another 4 years. But thanks very much for coming along and listening to us tonight.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yulin. Wait, I want to make sure I get this right. Yes, Mr. Aberman, you are next. Would you like to share your closing comments?
Thank you. And thank you, Heather and Julie and everybody at the Informer for organizing this tonight. And thank you for everybody who joined us out there and gave us the opportunity to tell you more about ourselves and what we stand for, and for asking some important questions like you did. My experience as a private real estate developer puts me in a unique position to help our town grow intelligently, with the focus not only on our current needs, but what needs will arise in the future. I believe in sustainable development. As a father of a 2-year-old, safety and security are among my main priorities. I've witnessed the success and shortcomings of municipal governments going through periods of change and growth, and I look to bring their best practices to our town while helping us avoid some common mistakes that I've seen. I provide a fresh perspective and view on some of our long-lasting issues, and I look forward to the challenge of tackling them. Je suis un straight shooter, quelqu'un qui ne se cache pas d'un problème ou d'une conversation difficile. En tant que membre de notre conseil municipal, je travaillerai avec diligence pour écouter vos besoins et vos inquiétudes, et tant que citoyen et pour trouver des solutions. J'ai passé ma carrière à améliorer d'autres communautés, et ce serait un honneur de pouvoir diriger mes efforts vers notre merveilleuse ville. Veuillez me considérer pour le siège du conseil municipal numéro 1 lorsque vous votez au cours des 2 prochaines semaines. Thank you, everybody, and have a great evening.
Merci, Monsieur Aberman. Et la parole termine avec Madame Simone Pennefather.
Merci beaucoup, Julie. Tu étais fabuleux dans tes directives ce soir, donc c'était vraiment apprécié. J'étais à l'écoute ce soir. I listened to you this evening, and I understood and I heard your concerns. I'm passionate about our community, and service is very close to my heart. As I said, I've been a federal public servant for almost 25 years. I have a true proven track record in this community. I've worked well and collaborated with partners, with members of the current council as well. I think that I would also, bring a voice of a challenge function as well. And it has been a pleasure to go door to door and to meet a lot of people, even in 13 years that I haven't met, over the course of my life cycle in Montréal-Ouest. J'apprécie beaucoup aussi ce processus, les personnes qui étaient informées, les personnes qui ont posé des questions. C'est super important dans le processus. So this is part of a process. And I want to move the town forward. I want to be part of a smart and innovative city as we move forward. And I feel that I can bring that experience to the table through both my academic and professional expertise. I also want to congratulate all of the candidates this evening. I think everybody was very cordial. I know in some other neighboring municipalities, it's not the case. And I think it's wonderful that we were able to sit here and have, a very important dialogue together, because I think we all care about this town. We're all passionate about this town. And I do want to thank Heather, and I want to thank Julie as well. I think they did a wonderful job doing this. And of course, as others had mentioned, it was a challenge this year because we had to do this in a very different way. I think there's still people who may be hesitant to vote because of having to go out in person. We have an intergenerational community that includes youth and includes our seniors as well. And we want to make sure that our seniors and our youth are well protected. And I do encourage our youth who are voting for the first time this year, go out and exercise your civic duty. It's really important. Be part of that voice. I encourage you. It's really important for our youth. So congratulations to those of you who will be voting for the first time this year. Donc, merci beaucoup à tout le monde qui a participé ce soir. And I look forward to serving you on council. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Small Pennefather. Thank you, candidates. Thank you to the residents who are still watching the live stream. I know there's many of you still connected and many that will watch this potentially on a replay. De la part du CA et des employés du Informer, je vous remercie tous d'avoir partagé vos commentaires et vos questions sur les deux côtés de la table virtuelle ce soir. On behalf of the Informer board employees, myself, I'd like to thank the candidates and the town residents for just really being honest with each other, being frank and curious. And so with that, I wish you all a very productive November 7th and October 31st by making your way to a poll, talking to your neighbors and candidates. Best of luck to you all.